Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Whitman and I am the Assessment and Accountability Director here at the State Department of Education. In this vignette, I will be discussing the assessments included in the Idaho Comprehensive Assessment System for school year 2020-2021. In addition to this recorded YouTube video, this interactive PowerPoint will be available on the SDE website along with an accessible version that includes the same information. Slides 4 to 10 in this and the interactive PowerPoint summarize the Idaho Comprehensive Assessment System based on the meaning of assessment acronyms, scheduled testing days or when the testing window opens for school year 2020-2021, assessment purpose, assessment content area, and availability by grade levels. Embedded in each summary slide is a link that accesses more specific information about the assessment. Here are some acronyms that will be used throughout this slide deck and their meanings. As you can see, links are embedded in some of the assessment names. For instance, if you click on the word Access, it will take you to a slide in this slide deck that contains more specific information about the Access assessment. I also want to mention here that throughout this slide deck, the asterisk next to the NMSQT acronym is indicating that juniors can participate in the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test at their own expense. Next up is a timeline for scheduled testing days or when test windows open. This timeline begins on August 1st, 2020 and ends on May 31st, 2021. The SAT, PSAT, and NMSQT tests have various testing days that can be chosen by the school this school year. Those tests with testing days have italicized text. The tests with testing windows have normal text. The date of the Civics Assessment Administration is determined by the LEA. Click on the name of the assessment to access the specific slide that details the exact scheduled testing days or when the testing window opens and closes. A link to the school year 2020-2021 assessment calendar is also included on this slide. Next up are two tables that group the assessments by their purpose and the content areas that are assessed by each. Be sure to pay close attention to the column headers on each of these tables. That moves us on to slide 8, which has a lot of information packed into it. I'll take my time going through this slide because that will set us up nicely for understanding the same organization of information in slides 9 and 10. Okay, let's start with the column headers. All the way on the left is a column of grades. In this slide are grades typically known as elementary grades, kindergarten to grade 5. From left to right, assessments in the Idaho Comprehensive Assessment System that apply to this grade band are listed in alphabetical order. From there, let's move to the symbols used in the key. Since the assessments have different purposes and requirements for certain student populations, we develop symbols to convey that information. First up is the filled-in circle. That symbol is used to indicate that the Access test is administered to English learners. Next up is the filled-in star. That indicates that the Idaho alternate assessment in ELA literacy, math, and science is administered to students with significant cognitive disabilities. After that is the filled-in square. That symbol indicates which assessments are required. The half-filled square is a special symbol that indicates the assessments that are recommended but optional for administration throughout the school year. Lastly is the filled-in triangle. This symbol is used to show the relationship to the IDAA and the Learner Characteristics Inventory, or LCI. The LCI is a survey of learning characteristics of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities who qualify for the IDAA. The LCI must be completed before students can access their IDAAs. Those symbols are then placed into the table to summarize assessments by grade. Let's use the grade 5 row as an example to understand the information conveyed in that row. Okay, so from left to right, students in grade 5 that are English learners are administered the Access test. Students in grade 5 with significant cognitive disabilities are administered the ELA Literacy, Math, and Science IDAA. From there, the ISAT Interims in ELA Literacy, Math, and Science can also be administered to grade 5 students, but it is optional. Students in grade 5 are required to take the ISAT summatives in ELA, Literacy, Math, and Science. If the grade 5 student takes the IDAA, Then an LCI is filled out prior to the student taking their IDAA. Then, the grade 5 student also is required to fill out the state student engagement survey. To address some of the assessments we haven't talked about in that grade 5 example, the IRI was not included in the grade 5 row, but students in kindergarten to grade 3 are required to take the IRI. Also, NAEP was not included in the grade 5 row, but I wanted to point out that if a 4th grade student is selected to participate in the NAEP, then they are required to do so. If a cell in the table does not contain a symbol, then that assessment is not required or recommended for that grade. So when analyzing the information in this table, start with the symbols and make sure to understand their meaning. Then read across each grade level's row to understand the audience for that assessment and if they are required or recommended. Slide 9 conveys the same information for the grades typically known as middle school grades, grades 6 to 8. Make sure to pay close attention to the alphabetical order of the assessments listed in the column headers from left to right. Notice that the IRI is not listed in this table. Slide 10 conveys the same information for the grades typically known as high school grades, grades 9 to 12. Again, make sure to pay close attention to the alphabetical order of the assessments listed in the column headers from left to right. Again, notice that the IRI is not listed in this table, but the NMSQT, PSAT, and SAT have been added. Those optional tests are indicated with a filled pentagon, and the SAT college entrance exam is indicated with a filled-in plus sign. As with the other two tables, the grades those tests apply to are included in the grade 10, 11, and 12 rows, respectively. Now that we've covered summaries of the assessments, let's dive in and talk specifics about each of the assessments in the Idaho Comprehensive Assessment System. First things first, let's go over the basic layout of the assessment-specific slide. The table on the left includes the name of the assessment with a complete meaning of any acronym included in that test name, a short description of the test, the scheduled testing days or when the testing window opens and closes for the 2020-2021 school year, the subjects covered in that assessment, the required or optional grades for the particular assessment, the specific student population administered the assessment, and how results from the assessments are reported. On the right will be logos for the test vendor and the SDE. Press the Control key and click on those logos to open a web browser window to the appropriate websites. Lastly, each of the slides include a picture of the SDE personnel responsible for providing support and guidance for the assessment and their contact information. The specific assessment slides are in alphabetical order by assessment name and are linked to from the summary slides. First up is the Access Test. It is administered to our English learners in kindergarten to grade 12. Testing window is scheduled to open on January 25th, 2021 and will close on March 5th. Contact Andrew Bennett with any questions or comments you might have on the Access Assessment. Next is our Idaho Alternate Assessment in ELA Literacy, Math, and Science. Remember, these assessments are an alternate to the ISAT and given to students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. The LCI is a required component of the IDAA. The IDAA's testing window is scheduled to open on March 15th. This school year, the IDAA will be administered in ELA, Math, and Science, with the grade levels for Science being 5, 8, and 11. I also want to point out that the IDAA Science will be a field test and therefore no scores will be reported. Contact Dr. Karen Striegel with any questions or comments you might have on the IDAAs. The Idaho Reading Indicator, or IRI, is up next. The fall testing window for the IRI opened on August 10th and is scheduled to remain open until September 25th. This early literacy assessment is required for all students in kindergarten to 3rd grade. Reach out to Alayna Knop with any questions you might have about the IRI. Various interim assessments in ELA Literacy, Math, and Science are available this school year. Interim assessments can be administered throughout the school year to provide educators with student performance data that can be used to adjust instructional practices and monitor students' progress toward mastery. The testing window for the ELA Literacy, Math, and Science interims opens on August 24th and closes on March 10, 2021. Notice that the interim testing window closes prior to the summative test window opening. Lots of additional information about the interims are on the ISAT portal, which you can access by clicking on the Cambium assessment logo, and a suite of vignettes covering the relevant information about the interims are also scheduled to be released soon. For any questions about the ELA interims, contact Alayna. And if you have any questions about the math or science interims, reach out to Kevin Chandler. The ELA Literacy, Math, and Science Summatives are up next. The ELA Literacy and Math Summatives are required for all students in grades 3 to 8 and 10. Those ELA Literacy and Math Summatives are optional to students in grades 9 and 11. For science, the required testing grades for the summatives are 5, 8, and 11. I do want to point out that the grade 5, 8, and 11 science summatives this school year will be field tests. Yes, students in those grade levels are required to take this field test. Since they will be field tests, the students will not be receiving scores or individual score reports. However, the student performance data gathered during this administration will be used to create the operational tests scheduled for next school year. As mentioned before, the testing window for the summatives opens after the interims, and for school year 2020-2021 is scheduled to open on March 15th. Questions about the ELA Literacy Summative can be directed towards Alayna, and for questions about the math or science summatives, reach out to Kevin Chandler. Here's a slide especially for the LCI. Remember that the LCI is required to be filled out by the teacher prior to the student taking their IDAA. Also keep in mind that students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, who meet all 4 participation requirements and qualify for the IDAAs, represent about 1% of the total student population. Again, contact Dr. Striegel with any questions or comments you might have on the LCI or IDAAs. NAEP, or the National Assessment of Educational Progress, is the next assessment in our comprehensive system. NAEP is an important assessment that measures what students in the U.S. know and can do in various subjects. This assessment provides data that can be used to compare student achievement across the nation, states, and in some urban districts. All students in grades 4 and 8 are eligible to be selected to participate in NAEP, save students that qualify for the IDAAs and first-year English learners. If a 4th or 8th grader is selected, they are required to participate in the math and reading NAEP assessments. Get in contact with Dr. Paul Kleinert if you have any questions about NAEP in Idaho. The suite of college entrance exams are up next. They include the PSAT, the NMSQT, and the SAT. As mentioned before, these exams will be given on specific testing days. The College Board has selected a few dates for those tests, which can then be selected by the schools. Makeup testing days have also been chosen. Be sure to check out SDE's college entrance exam pages for up-to-date information and scheduling, and follow up with Ayaka Nakui for any questions you might have about these exams. The student, parent, staff satisfaction and engagement surveys are up next. These surveys provide valuable feedback on students, parents, and teachers' educational experiences here in the state of Idaho. The student surveys are required for all students in grades 3 through 12. Parents and teachers have their own surveys developed by Idaho stakeholders. In addition to my new gig as the Assessment and Accountability Director, I'm also heading up the survey project. So do not hesitate to reach out to me with any questions or concerns you might have about the surveys for this school year. Next are the WIDA screeners. WIDA screeners are used to assess a provisional English learner's English language proficiency and determines whether a provisional English learner is eligible for English language support services. The WIDA screeners can be administered throughout the year. Districts have 30 days to identify a newly enrolled student to Idaho for English language support services. Contact Andrew Bennett with any questions you might have on how to administer either the kindergarten WAPT or WIDA screener. Last, but certainly not least, is the Civics assessment. LEAs can decide when to administer this required exam to students in grades 7 or higher. The LEAs will decide which questions from the U.S. Citizenship Naturalization Test they will include on the civics assessment, and will also determine the passing threshold to meet the graduation requirement. Taylor Baggerly has all the answers to any questions you might have about the civics assessment, so be sure to reach out to her in case you have any. Again, thanks so much for listening. My name is Kevin Whitman, and the Assessment and Accountability team at the SDE is eager to offer support and guidance in any way we can this school year. Shown here once again is the contact info for our incredible team. Please subscribe to our newsletter and watch for updates as additional online training vignettes are published to our website. Thanks again.